My dad wanted to carry on the family line and actually kidnapped a fox to keep for the night. But after just one night, the fox turned into a stunning beauty. My dad was so scared he knelt down to beg for mercy right away. Turns out the woman wasn't angry at all. She even asked to do this every single day. And that's how their happy nightly routine went. Later, my fox mom was pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to me. Years later, when I went up the mountain to chop firewood, I saw a huge python squeezing a little fox tight. I didn't hesitate at all. I just threw the chopper in my hand right at it. It hit the python straight on the head. The python struggled a few times and died instantly. Although the little fox survived the python's attack, it was badly injured. I quickly carried it back to my home and treated its wounds with herbal medicine. Just a few days later, the little guy could run and jump again. Since then, this little fox just refused to leave my house. But I'm an orphan with no parents. I can barely even feed myself. I tried to send it back to the woods several times, but every time night fell, it would show up at my door again, with either wild fruit in its mouth or a wild rabbit or pheasant. That's when I finally realized the little fox was trying to tell me it could support itself, and I didn't need to feed it. So I finally felt relieved and let it stay. After that, the little fox stayed by my side the whole time, until I turned 18 years old. The little fox suddenly left. I waited till dark, but it never came back. Just when I was about to go out looking for it, an old lady showed up at my door. She was leaning on a cane, with a kind expression on her face. "Young man, I'm here to find my granddaughter. Have you seen her?" My heart skipped a beat right away. Recently, no one from outside the village has come by at all. "Who is your granddaughter?" The old lady coughed lightly at this point, stared at me and said, "I went away a few years ago and left my granddaughter to watch the house, but she was gone when I came back. Someone said she's been living at your place." I froze when I heard that. "There's clearly only me living in this house," I answered politely. "You must have got the wrong place, ma'am." The old lady nodded after hearing that, but her eyes were fixed firmly on my kitchen. I turned around to look and found the little fox squatting right there. It wagged its tail at the old lady and even looked like it was smiling. After the old lady saw the little fox, she just turned around and left without saying a word that night. The little fox slept on my stomach as usual. When I woke up the next day, the little fox was gone again. I just got out of bed when I saw a red belly band on the table, with a tuft of hair inside it, wrapped around with red paper in the middle. I had no idea what this was for, so I took these things to the village chief. When the village chief saw these items, he laughed and said, "Oh wow, a girl is making advances to you. You can take this to her family to propose marriage. Come on, tell Grandpa. Which girl gave this to you?" I froze on the spot. Could the little fox have brought this back for me? But what I didn't expect was, from that day on, the little fox never showed up again. After it left, I felt totally empty inside. Every day besides eating and sleeping, I searched all over the mountains for it, but sadly I didn't find any trace of it. I searched for more than half a month and still couldn't find the little fox. I was already desperate by then. I thought I would never see it again. Until one night, half a month later, an old lady was squatting at my door crying. I asked her what was wrong. The old lady looked up sharply when she heard my voice and spoke in a hoarse voice. "I'm looking for my grandson. My grandson is missing. You've seen him, haven't you?" I couldn't help shivering when I heard that. Last time someone came looking for a granddaughter. Now someone's looking for a grandson. Why are they all coming to my house to look for people? I quickly said I hadn't seen her grandson, but a confused look appeared on the old lady's face. "You haven't seen him? What about 6 years ago? Did you see my grandson 6 years ago?" She sounded like she was interrogating me. I thought hard for a long time, and still had no clue at all. "You must be mistaken, ma'am. I really haven't seen your grandson." After hearing what I said, the old lady stopped talking, but a weird smile crept across her face. I was so scared by her smile that I stumbled back several steps. I turned and ran stumbling all the way to the village chief's house and told him everything that had just happened. The village chief froze right away. He pointed behind me and said, "Is that her you're talking about?" I instantly felt a chill run down my back. I turned around, trembling all over, and saw that old woman standing right behind me without a sound. I was terrified and immediately hid behind the village chief. The village chief looked her up and down. "Which village are you from?" "It's not nice to scare a little kid like this in the middle of the night, right?" the old woman said in a low, gruff voice. I'm here looking for my grandson. After that, no matter what the village chief asked, she didn't say a single word. She just kept smiling that weird smile. So the village chief took 2 eggs from his house and handed them to her. Take these and get lost. Don't ever come scare people on my turf again. Who would have thought the old lady just glanced at the eggs and smashed them on the ground? Then she pointed at me and roared in a hoarse voice. He killed my grandson. Ah! I'm gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. Hearing that, the village chief, his face turned pale instantly, then told me to turn on the yard light. I hurried to flip the switch. The area in front of the door lit up right away. That's when I got a clear look. There was a venomous red-banded snake coiled on the old woman's shoulder. It was baring its 2 fangs right now, staring daggers at me. The village chief panicked immediately. He quickly whispered to me, "Kiddo, my eyesight's bad. Check if that old lady has a shadow, will ya?" Hearing that, I whipped my head around to look. The old woman was standing straight under the light, and she really had no shadow. Cold sweat broke out all over me instantly. I was too scared to say a word. Just nodded stiffly. The village chief suddenly said out loud, "Don't be scared, kiddo. I got an ancestral sword in my room. Go get it for me right now." Hearing that, I ran trembling into the house. But I rummaged around for ages and couldn't find any sword at all. When I came out to tell him I couldn't find it, I saw the old woman's figure was already walking away. The village chief pulled me into the house looking panicked and shut the door tight. "Silly kid, there's no sword." I lied to her. "You've messed with some evil stuff." After the village chief said that, he turned off all the lights in the house and asked me if I'd offended anything. I thought for a long time. I'd never offended anyone my whole life. "Did you ever kill something you shouldn't have?" Hearing that, I suddenly remembered 6 years ago, to save a little fox, I beat a white snake to death. I told the village chief about this, and he trembled all over after hearing it. "You unlucky kid. How can you just kill random things from the mountain?" The village chief said he'd take me to see the local shaman tomorrow, and told me to sleep in his room tonight. Don't answer no matter who calls your name, got it? I took the village chief's words to heart, too scared to say a single word. But when midnight came, a strange noise suddenly came from outside. Then I heard the old woman sobbing. I looked up out the window. A hunched figure was pacing outside the window. She walked back and forth for a while, then suddenly pressed herself against the window, like she was looking for me. I was so scared I couldn't move a muscle. Then the village chief's voice came from the next room. "Cover your head with the quilt. Don't look." I quickly wrapped myself up tightly with the quilt. My heart was pounding like crazy, but the sobbing didn't stop. It kept getting louder and softer, moving closer and further away. It wasn't until after 3 a.m. that the crying outside finally stopped, but I still didn't dare to come out from under the quilt. I don't know how much time passed before I finally fell asleep slowly. In my dream, I saw a white snake staring at me intensely. It spoke in human words, "Give me back my life." I woke up from the nightmare, jerking upright in bed. It was already broad daylight outside the window. The village chief was standing by the bed, telling me to get up quickly. He was going to take me to the shaman in the next village to get checked out. But when night came, that crazy old woman came back again. I was tortured so bad I was in a daze. I burned incense, joss paper, kowtowed, and begged for mercy. Tried every method I could think of, but none of it worked at all. What was even scarier was that when I woke up the next day, I was actually lying under a big tree in the mountains. This is exactly where I killed the white snake years ago. So I holed up at the village chief's house for 3 days. I tried every possible way I could think of. I couldn't bear to drag the village chief into more trouble. So on the morning of the 4th day, I snuck back home. But little did I know, I'd barely reached my doorstep when the village chief caught up, huffing and puffing. "Silly kid. How could Grandpa just watch you go to your death? Come on, no matter what happens today, I'll fix this whole mess for you." Kiddo, at this point, Grandpa ain't gonna hide anything from you. The Liu family is coming for your life. If you want to stay alive, there's only one way left. What Liu family? No one in our village has that last name. There are 5 great immortal clans in these mountains. Hu Huang Bai Liu Hui, the snake you killed back then, and the ones coming after you now are all members of the Liu family. And the little one you saved years ago? That little fox is probably from the Hu family. We can only ask the Hu family for help with this. Grandpa, is there really no other way? Humans and spirits are supposed to stay out of each other's business. I didn't want you to go down this path, but we've run out of all other options now. The village chief pointed at my chest as he spoke. Do you still have that red belly pocket? I pulled out the belly pocket with shaking hands. Hold on to it tight, this is a token from a girl of the Hu family. Only with it do you have a chance to find the Hu family. As soon as he finished speaking, a sudden sound came from the yard outside. A dense, continuous rustling noise. The village chief's face dropped instantly. He grabbed the firewood knife next to him. We'd just reached the main room when something terrifying happened. That old hag was standing creepily at the entrance. My mind went blank with a buzz. My legs went weak from fear. I instinctively tried to step back. Tears welled up in my eyes. The village chief pushed a table hard against the main room door. He turned back and yelled at me. Listen carefully, kiddo. Only if the Hu family steps in, our village can be saved. Take the token and run to the unmarked graveyard on South Mountain. No matter what you hear, don't you dare look back. The front door was slamming loudly from the impact of the snake swarm outside. A few small snakes had already slithered in through the crack under the door. The village chief gritted his teeth and pressed his whole body against the door panel. I looked at the elderly village chief, and tears burst out of my eyes. I grabbed the red belly pocket from my chest and held it tight. I kicked open the back window and dove straight into the endless dark night. I hadn't run far when I suddenly heard a sound from behind me, another dense rustling noise. That crimson venomous snake was actually chasing after me. It was moving extremely fast and was just about to bite my heel. My heart sank. I slipped and fell forward. Just then, a white shadow shot out from the nearby bushes and let out a familiar fox cry. I looked closely. It was that little white fox. I quickly grabbed the firewood knife, meaning to go help it. But unexpectedly, the little fox bit the snake's tail and zipped into the dark woods in a flash. I wanted to chase after it, but the woods were too dark. I couldn't see the path at all. A gust of night wind blew past, and I caught a whiff of a familiar strange scent. It was the unique scent of the little fox. It clicked for me right away. That little fox was no ordinary fox at all. She was actually a fox immortal, the second I saw her just now. My originally panicked mood calmed down a lot, but I had no time to hesitate. Grandpa the village chief was still waiting for me to save him. I took a deep breath and had no choice but to keep running towards South Mountain. I'd never run so fast in my life. The wind whistled in my ears. It felt like there was always a cold, slippery feeling brushing against my heel from behind. I didn't dare look back and could only run wildly under the faint moonlight. This place was the village's forbidden area. No one dared to come here normally. The higher I went, the more desolate the path got, surrounded by messy rocks and unmarked lonely graves. Slow down, kiddo. Wait for Grandpa. The village chief's voice suddenly came from behind me. I stopped in my tracks, and my heart leapt with joy. Did Grandpa manage to escape? I was just about to look back when the village chief's warning flashed through my mind. No matter what you hear, don't ever look back. The voice got closer and closer. I could even sense someone's presence, blowing cold air on the back of my neck. Turn around and look at Grandpa. I kept running uphill like crazy, until I ran into a spooky unmarked graveyard. Suddenly a weird hair-combing sound came from ahead. By the light of the moon, I saw that on a grave mound up ahead. There was a figure in white sitting with its back to me, holding a worn-out wooden comb in its hand, combing slowly stroke by stroke. Its long hair that dragged on the ground. Hey, little brother, do you think my hair is pretty? My whole body went stiff. That was when I realized in horror, she wasn't facing away from me at all. She was looking straight at me. The next second, she brushed the thick, messy hair off her face, revealing a deathly pale face. At the sight of this, my legs went weak from fear, and I collapsed right on the ground. The red belly band and lock of hair in my arms rolled out too. The female ghost let out a shrill laugh and lunged right at me. At the same time, out of the bushes behind me emerged that scarlet venomous snake. It bared its fangs and darted straight for my throat. The only thing I had was the firewood knife for self-defense. I was immediately overwhelmed by despair. At this critical moment, the red belly band on the ground suddenly glowed with red light. That lock of hair burst into flames without any wind, turning into a wisp of blue smoke that shot straight to the sky. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. The ghost lunging midair looked like it had crashed into an invisible wall and let out a blood-curdling scream. It was as if she had seen her natural enemy, turned into a cloud of black smoke and darted back into the grave mound. As for that scarlet viper, It looked like it had a cramp right then, lying flat on the ground without moving an inch. It didn't even have the guts to run away. I was gasping for air heavily and hadn't recovered from the scare just yet. Before I could get up, a gust of cold wind rose from the ground. A deep rhythmic gong sound echoed throughout the unmarked graveyard. Right after that, white joss paper started floating down from the sky, falling scattered just like snow. In the originally pitch-black woods, 2 lanterns suddenly lit up out of nowhere, floating unsteadily straight towards me. As the lanterns got closer, a snow-white sedan chair pierced through the night mist and came into view. I felt a surge of joy in my heart. I figured the blue smoke just now had summoned the Who family's rescuers, so I hurried towards the sedan chair. But before I could take a few steps, a cold, eerie voice came from the darkness, on the other side of the sedan chair. "Where are you?" "Come out and get in the sedan chair. Granny will take you home." That eerie voice drifted into my ears with the wind. It was that crazy old woman. She talked as she walked, getting closer to me step by step. I was trembling all over from fear, clutching the glowing red belly band in my hand tightly. I hid behind a tombstone, not daring to move at all. She seemed to have smelled the burnt hair scent from just now, and was following the scent, getting closer little by little. Finally, her small feet in black cloth shoes stopped right in front of the tombstone I was hiding behind. I bet you can't hide anywhere now." The crazy old woman slowly walked up to me, sniffing loudly, getting closer and closer. This went on for a little while. The crazy old woman let out a cold snort, turned around and left. Once her figure was completely out of sight, I began gasping heavily for air. I remembered what Grandpa the village chief had told me. I kept walking uphill along the gray forest path. After I reached the top of the mountain, I found the thickest tree Grandpa had mentioned, and behind the tree I found a stone tablet, carved with the names of the Who family's ancestors. I knelt down in front of the stone tablet, held the belly band with both hands, and kowtowed 3 firm times. The next second, a strong wind suddenly picked up around me. Leaves were lifted into the air, swirling around me, and right after that, a woman's voice came from right behind me. "We've been waiting for you for ages. You're finally here. Come with me." I quickly stood up and bowed to her. She gave a soft smile and said to me, "My name is Duo. I'm the eldest in the Who family. I came here specifically to pick you up, once we become family later. You don't need to be this formal." I finally let out a sigh of relief and quickly thanked her. She waved her hand dismissively. "You can save your thanks for Princess Rongrong from our family. She threw a fit until I agreed to come pick you up. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered to come." She gave a helpless smile. I couldn't help but ask, "Who is Rongrong?" She said, "Rongrong is your little fox, duh. Our second daughter is the cutest little thing ever. You'll get to see her when it's time for the wedding night. Wait, I'm actually marrying a little fox." The second I heard the words wedding night, my heart started pounding like crazy. Then she saw my face go red and said even more cheerfully, "Well, the custom around here is before the wedding night. The groom and bride aren't allowed to see each other. Look how eager you are. Relax, little Princess Rongrong has lived with you for 6 years. She's the hottie tons of guys are drooling over, you know." My face turned even redder when I heard that. I didn't dare reply, then we just looked at each other, in silence. We walked like that for quite a while. Suddenly I spotted a small village all lit up bright. There were even servants standing at the gate. I just started following her towards the gate, when out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the second floor of the house opposite. Someone seemed to be leaning on the windowsill looking at me. I looked up, and vaguely made out a girl in red clothes, wearing a phoenix coronet, peeking at me from the windowsill. But when she realized I'd spotted her, she looked super embarrassed, and quickly covered her face with her sleeve. On purpose, so I couldn't see her. I frowned. Could that be the little fox? I had to hold back my curiosity, and followed Duo into the house ahead. The second I stepped inside, I saw loads of people sitting in the room. I was totally shocked when I saw them. I've seen this old lady before. She's the one who came to my house looking for her granddaughter that time. Duo pointed at the old lady and introduced her to me. "This is my mother." I quickly cupped my hands and bowed to her. The old lady suddenly smiled at me. It was a kind, gentle smile, but what I felt more was an air of authority from her. Then Duo introduced me to the other people sitting there. After we sat down, Granny Hugh finally spoke. "Duo, leave us." "Yes." "Guard the entrance properly. We don't welcome people from the Liu family. Don't let them get in. The dinner is all ready. Everyone go take your seats first. When it was just the two of us left in the room, the old lady's face suddenly looked upset. She said to me, "Child, I know everything that's happened to you. Before the wedding ceremony is successfully completed, he could mess things up any time. You saved my girl. We should do everything we can to help you, but our Who family can't break our rules either. Everything before the wedding ceremony, you have to handle on your own." Even though my legs were shaking like crazy, I had no choice but to nod stiffly. "I understand, as long as I can save Grandpa the village chief. I'll risk anything." Granny Hugh visibly trembled a little, huffed in approval, and said, "The person who marries into our Who family really is something special. I believe in you." Then Granny Hugh had someone help me put on the groom's hat and red robe. The second I walked out the door, I got into the red bridal sedan chair. Not long after the sedan chair entered the alley, I suddenly heard a creepy voice ask outside, "You guys holding a wedding?" The sedan chair stopped right away. My scalp went numb with fear. I lifted the window screen and looked ahead. Duoduo outside the sedan roared angrily, "How dare you? This is Who family territory. You can't cause trouble here." Suddenly, a red snake popped out of nowhere and zoomed right into the sedan chair. It bit me right on the wrist. I screamed out loud from the pain. After that, my consciousness got really fuzzy. I was half conscious as Who family servants helped me into the main hall. When I woke up again, I found myself in a room. I looked around and saw the room was covered with red double happiness symbols. There was also a bride sitting on the bed inside. She had a red veil over her head. Oh, so this is the bridal chamber? I remembered the snake bite from earlier and quickly pulled up my sleeve to check. There were 2 faint bite marks left on my wrist, and someone had already put medicine on it. I suddenly thought of Grandpa the village chief. I'm here having the wedding ceremony. I wonder if the snakes in the village have left yet. I panicked, rolled out of bed, and was about to leave. "Where do you think you're going?" The bride sitting on the bed suddenly spoke. "I'm going to find Grandpa the village chief. I don't know how things are back in the village now." As I said that, I yanked the door open. I didn't expect that right after I opened the door. I saw Duo standing guard outside. She stopped me right away. "You can't go. If you step out this door now, what's going to happen to our Rongrong?" After saying that, she pushed me straight back into the room and locked the door behind her. Before I could even react, the bride inside the room spoke up too. "If you dare leave tonight, I'll cry right in front of you." I was totally speechless. I had to calm her down first. "I'm just going to check on Grandpa the village head. I won't leave, I promise." But she said there's no way I can get out of the Who family's house. I didn't buy that at all. I walked to the door and pulled at it like crazy. But it was locked from the outside. There's no way I could open it. I was panicking with my mind all messed up when she spoke again. "Then I'll come with you. I know a way to sneak you out." I was stunned. Is that really such a good deal? But she shook her head and whispered, "No, the red wedding veil hasn't been lifted yet," Mom said. "You have to be the one to lift the red veil. And we have to drink the cross-cupped wine, too." What a hassle. I glanced anxiously toward the door. We can't waste any more time. So I rushed over to the bed. I reached out ready to lift her red veil, but she stopped me again. She said unhappily, "You can't use your hands. You have to use that little stick over there." My heart skipped a beat. This woman is way too picky about rules, huh? I had no choice, so I ran to the table and grabbed the stick. Meanwhile, her soft white hands clenched the hem of her dress tightly. She looked even more nervous than I was. I didn't care if she was ready or not. I just lifted it right off. The second the red veil came off, I was completely stunned. She was so beautiful. Wearing a jewel-embedded phoenix crown, she had a head of snow-white long hair and a soft, dewy little face. She was biting her red lips, her big watery eyes wide open, looking at me shyly. She was so adorable that for a second, I completely forgot about everything else. I just kept staring at her. I didn't even want to blink. The legends were really right. Every fox spirit is drop-dead gorgeous. She got even more nervous when she saw me staring at her like that. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Her words snapped me out of my daze. That's when I remembered the important thing I had to do. The village chief and others are still waiting for me to get help. "Can you take me out now?" "No, we haven't drunk the cross-cupped wine yet." She pursed her lips and added, "I knew if I didn't play along with her, I'd never get out of here." So I quickly fetched 2 cups of wine and handed one to her. "Come on, drink up, no backing out, okay?" "Nope, that's not enough." "I want you to call me your wife," she said proudly. I was practically dying of anxiety. And she was still deliberately making things hard for me. I had no choice but to say, "Wife, drink up quick, I really have urgent business." She let out a satisfied huff and took the initiative to link her arm with mine. Getting ready to drink the cross-cupped wine, we were really close to each other. Then we faced each other and drank the wine. I was scared she'd go back on her word, so right after we finished drinking, I urged her to hurry up and leave. She suddenly grabbed my arm, glanced warily toward the door, and said in a low voice, "There's no way we can get out through here. Mom used to lock me up all the time, but I have a secret passage. Don't tell anyone else about it, okay?" After saying that, she pulled me over to the wall, bent down and pulled a piece of wood out of the wall. Turns out it was a hidden door, and it opened right up. She put a finger to her lips to shush me, sneakily poked her head out first, then pulled me out with her, and yelled excitedly, "I'm out again." But no one expected. Right after we stepped outside, we saw Grandma Hu and Duo standing outside looking at me. "You little girl, you're already married, and you still cause so much trouble. You're sneaking out of the bridal chamber already." Grandma Hu glared at Rong Rong, her tone full of mock annoyance. Rong Rong immediately deflated, hung her head, twisted the corner of her clothes, and whispered defensively, "I just wanted to take him for a walk in the yard." "What's going on in your head?" As if I wouldn't know. "Go back to your room right now. I need to talk to Chen Ping." Grandma Hu put on a stern face. "If you don't behave yourself later, I'll personally supervise your wedding night." Rong Rong nodded helplessly, then glanced at me sheepishly. She looked really guilty, then turned around and went back to the room. Old Mrs. Hu led me into the main hall. She stared at me for a few seconds and said in a deep voice, "I know you're worried about your village chief. Relax now that you've married into the Hu family. The Liu family won't dare mess with your village anymore." She headed for the door as she spoke, then suddenly turned back, grinned mischievously and said, "Oh right, don't be shy on your wedding night. That girl Rong Rong has a really stubborn temper. It's about time she gets a taste of being a bride." My face burned up immediately after hearing that. I could only nod my head. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and took out the small cloth bag that Grandpa Village Chief had stuffed firmly into my arms before I left. I opened the cloth bag. Inside there was a bank book, a tattered old book with no title, and a crumpled sheet of letter paper. The letter was written by Grandpa Village Chief. The handwriting was all crooked. "My dear grandson, when you read this letter, I might already be gone. Remember what I say. First, always keep your guard up about everything. Second, the money in the bank book is all the savings I've scraped together my whole life for my funeral. I'm leaving it to you to pay for your college tuition. No matter what, live a good life." Tears streamed down my face nonstop after I finished the letter. Grandpa Village Chief risked his life to save me, and now his life is hanging in the balance. But there's nothing I can do about it. Who on earth should I trust? I wiped my face carelessly and looked up to find Rong Rong spacing out at the table. When she saw my red eyes and my distraught look, she hurried over to ask me what her mother had said to me. But I was in no mood to talk. I just sat numbly on the bed, out of it. No matter what she said, I didn't respond at all. Finally, she got mad, sat on the chair with a sullen face, glared at me furiously, and didn't say a word either. Before I knew it, I got sleepy, so I laid on the bed getting ready to sleep. But no sooner had I closed my eyes than she flew into a rage. She stormed over angrily, grabbed me by the ear and dragged me off the bed. She pouted and cursed. "How dare you ignore me? You're not sleeping on the bed tonight. Sleep on the floor." Then she looked all wronged, like I was the one who bullied her. I was originally lying on the floor, fuming, but when I saw how upset she looked, I was scared she'd actually start crying, and old Mrs. Hu would come after me later. So I stood up and said, "I'm sorry. I was just lost in thought just now. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Call me wife." She curled her lips and turned around. My head was full of the lives of the whole village. My mind was a total mess. How did I have the energy to coax this spoiled princess? I was like a deflated balloon. I slouched over the table, buried my head in my arms, and decided to just play dumb. "Nini, I even saved you that day, you know? Turns out you're just an ungrateful brat." She was so angry she was about to cry. Then I heard her flop angrily onto the bed, yanked the quilt over her head and covered herself completely. She was still muttering curses at me under her breath. I closed my eyes and sighed to myself. It's over, my whole life is over. Even if she doesn't torment me to death later, I'll probably end up beaten black and blue anyway. The mountain night wind was freezing cold. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping on the table and woke up freezing cold. I rubbed my stiff arms and looked towards the 8-step bed hung with red curtains in the dim moonlight. She was fast asleep on her side, breathing steadily. The red wedding veil had long been kicked off somewhere. Her impossibly delicate little face looked enticingly fair under the moonlight. I swallowed hard and tiptoed over to the bed. The quilt must be so warm inside. My hand hovered in the air, hesitating whether to lift the corner of the quilt and climb in. But then I thought again, she's still mad at me. If I wake her up, this spoiled princess will definitely skin me alive. Besides, she's as beautiful as a siren. If I actually climb in, I'm just a kid who's never even been in a relationship. What if I can't control myself and do something out of line? I don't even know if I can survive from that crazy old lady's hands anyway. How can I take responsibility for her? I sighed. I still didn't dare get on the bed. I just sat down on the floor right there, leaning my back against the edge of the bed. That was when I noticed her body was constantly giving off a warm current. The closer I got to her, the more comfortable I felt. Before I knew it, I fell asleep again just like that. When I woke up again, the sun was already shining into the room. It was already noon the next day. I groggily felt something on my chest, soft and squishy pressing down on me. It also carried that familiar strange fragrance. I snapped my eyes open. I looked down. Rongrong had gotten out of bed at some point. She was curled up into a ball, pressed tightly against my chest like a little fox, sleeping soundly. Looking at her defenseless sleeping face, my heart skipped a beat hard. A scene suddenly flashed through my mind. That was exactly how the injured little fox was 6 years ago. It would obediently lay on my stomach to sleep every night. I zoned out for a while. I swallowed dryly. I suddenly thought of Grandpa Village Chief and the others. I quickly got up. Rongrong was woken up by my movement. She rubbed her eyes and said to me angrily, "Bad hubby, Mom told you to go see her once you wake up." Cold sweat broke out all over me when I heard that. Could she have found out that I made Rongrong angry last night? After that, I walked to the hall trembling with fear. I saw the hall was full of people. Only after introductions did I learn that all of them are Hurongrong's uncles and aunts. They all seemed happy to see me. They also said Rongrong had been spoiled by them and had a bad temper, asking me to be more patient with her. Then came the 3 rules we had to follow. First, you can't beat or scold Hurongrong, and you can't abandon her. Second, you're not allowed to see other women outside. Third, you must not make her angry on purpose. You need to take care of each other. After everyone left, old Mrs. Hu kept me alone. She took a sip of tea and said calmly, "That crazy woman from the Liu family guarded outside our mountain gate the entire night. She only left when the sun came up. Take Rongrong down the mountain and go back to have a look. If your village chief is still alive, pack up your things and move to the county town as soon as possible. Don't go back to that lousy village again. Cut off all the worldly ties and conflicts." After hearing what the old lady said, I felt like I'd grabbed a lifeline. The crazy woman left at dawn, which means the village might have survived the disaster. After we said our goodbyes, the Hu family's servants had already taken a shortcut in advance to deliver Hurongrong's dowry to my house. Then the 2 of us went down the mountain together. The whole way there, I was going crazy, worrying about whether Grandpa Village Chief was alive or dead. I kept my head down and walked really fast. Rongrong kept yelling, "Wait for me" from behind. She even clung to me, wanting me to hold her hand while walking. I had no mood to mess around with her at all. All I could think about was hurrying back to the village to check. But I never expected that after going down the mountain, a layer of white fog suddenly rose in the woods ahead. Right after that, a dark figure leaning on a crutch slowly walked out of the white fog. My heart skipped a beat in shock. It was the crazy woman from the Liu family. I was so scared I turned around ready to run. Who knew Hurongrong had already caught up and grabbed my arm in one go, she said with her eyes closed, enjoying the moment. I knew it. "You would never leave me behind. Can you be serious for a second? Our enemy has come to find us." "I don't care. She doesn't dare to bully us at all." I looked at the crazy woman walking out of the white fog and patted her anxiously. She didn't even open her eyes and shook my arm nonstop while hugging it. The crazy woman was hunched over, staring at me with fierce eyes. She glanced at Hurongrong out of the corner of her eye and curled her lips into a malicious smile. You got yourself a wife, huh? You're pretty capable. But do you really think that just because you married into the Who family, I wouldn't dare to touch you? Rongrong turned around abruptly and pushed me away with one hand. I only felt a blur in front of my eyes, and a fishy wind blew straight at my face. I don't know how much time passed. I was woken up by a bone-chilling coldness. I struggled to get up and rubbed my groggy head. The next second, my whole body jolted. I saw Rongrong, who was perfectly fine just now, was now lying in the grass not far away, not moving at all. I quickly ran over and helped her up. Rongrong. The weirdest thing was her body temperature. I patted her on the cheek. She slowly opened her eyes. Her pupils had narrowed into thin vertical slits. So hot? It burns. She twisted her body unconsciously. She grabbed my collar tightly with both hands. She snuggled into my arms like a snake. Her burning cheek rubbed back and forth against my neck. Her breath was rapid and scorching hot. I quickly held down her fidgeting hands. She opened her mouth to bite my neck. She seemed to want to suck my life force. I pushed her head away hard. I asked her what was wrong. That old lady was driven away. But I got hit by the Heiwan snake venom. Rongrong seemed to regain a little clarity. She clenched her teeth and curled up in pain. Heiwan snake venom. I remembered the village elders talking about this poison before. Spirits hit by this poison will gradually lose their minds. If the poison isn't treated in time, they'll die from shattered meridians within 3 days. Husband, run away fast. When I completely lose my mind, I don't know what I'll do to you. I ignored her. I just looked around. My heart was filled with despair. We're in the middle of nowhere here. It's way too far to get to the Who families, and going back to the village. The village chief is in no state to help. There's no way he can cure this demonic poison. I remembered my grandpa once told me, there's a shop on the old street of the nearby county town, called 9 Paths Tuina Massage. If you run into an evil sickness you can't cure, go there and try your luck. Though it sounds like a sketchy massage parlor. But right now, besides taking a gamble, I have no other choice. I glanced at Rongrong on the ground. Her condition was really off at this point. She seemed unbearably hot and restless, like she had a bad fever. I didn't dare waste any more time. I slung her burning body over my back. I carried her on my back. I stumbled out of the woods, walking unsteadily, and got to the road. I flagged down a bus. There were a lot of people on the bus. I got on carrying a disheveled, pretty woman on my back. Immediately drew stares from everyone on the bus. I kept my head down, bit the bullet, and walked to the corner of the last row to sit down. The bus started moving. It was bumping really badly. Rongrong got more and more restless in my arms. She looked really uncomfortable. She made soft, suppressed whimpers in her throat. Like a hurt little fox. Her hands moved around unconsciously. A few passengers in the front row turned around, looking at me with weird looks. I could also faintly hear them whispering. Young people these days, in public like this, they have no sense of decency at all. I was so embarrassed my scalp went numb. I could only hold Rongrong tight against my chest. Rongrong, please, stop moving, I whispered pleadingly in her ear. She opened her mouth and bit my palm. Her sharp canine teeth broke the skin. Blood flowed into her mouth. Instead, she seemed to have tasted something good, making gurgling, swallowing sounds in her throat. The red glow in her eyes got brighter. I endured the pain and didn't let go, and didn't dare make a sound. Luckily, she quieted down once she started drinking the blood. This ride was way worse than being in a mass grave. Finally, the bus entered the county town. I rushed off the bus with Rongrong on my back, like I was running for my life. This was the center of the county town. The streets were packed with traffic and people. There were students heading home from school everywhere, all of them carrying school bags, while I was carrying a woman in a wedding dress. We looked totally out of place. I kept my head down and walked faster. I ducked into a dark alley, stopped in front of a shabby storefront. Half the neon lights on the sign were broken. Only 2 of the 4 characters for 9 Paths Tuina were still flashing 9 and Tui. All kinds of posters for treating stubborn illnesses were plastered on the door. There was also a legitimate massage sign hanging on the glass door, but it didn't look like a legitimate place, no matter how you looked at it. I pushed the door open and went in. A middle-aged man wearing sunglasses was lying on a lounge chair, twirling 2 walnuts in his hand. A walking stick for the blind and a magazine were placed next to him. Legitimate massage is 100 yuan, extra 50 per added hour. If you want something illegal, turn left when you go out. I'm here to save someone. I didn't beat around the bush. I immediately took the already delirious Rong Rong off my back and put her on the massage bed. I pulled off the coat covering her. Treat her illness. When the man heard those two words, he suddenly stood up. Rong Rong looked completely unrecognizable at this point. She was opening her mouth and snapping at the air. The man's face changed drastically. It's Haywan snake venom. How the hell did you mess with this evil thing? He walked over to the bed. He reached out and took Rong Rong's wrist. His brows furrowed tightly. The venom has already seeped into her bone marrow. She's gonna turn completely feral any minute. Kid, I advise you to throw her out right now. In less than half an hour, she'll turn into a wild fox and run back to the mountains. You can still save your own life that way. If you don't leave now, she'll suck you dry into a mummy tonight. I looked at Rong Rong, who was struggling in pain. She was still unconsciously calling out husband. My heart ached sharply. I pulled that bank book out of my pocket and slapped it hard on his hand. There's 30 grand here, is that enough? If it's not enough, I have more? The man glanced at the bank book, then looked at me. The money's enough, but I can't cure her. This is the yin poison from the Liu family. Neither gold needles nor herbal decoctions work on it. It takes the one who tied the bell to untie it. The only antidote is none of it works. I looked at the master in confusion. The man pointed at Rong Rong and said seriously, she only has Ye Shinshin in her eyes. It won't work with anyone else, only with you. She'll obey out of her subconscious. But you have to think this through. You have to hold up against her frenzy. The slightest mistake, and your essence will be sucked dry. You'll turn into a mummy too. I froze on the spot. Looking at Rong Rong's pained face, I nodded through gritted teeth. The man turned around and pulled a red cloth pouch from under the counter and stuffed it into my arms. Take her to a quiet place right now. Light this pair of wedding candles, and that'll help detox her. But you have to remember this for sure. Before the wedding candles burn out, the poison has to be completely removed. Otherwise, both of you will suffer the backlash. After saying that, the man dug out a bottle of long-preserved Realgar wine and handed it to me. One more thing. The risk is huge. Once the detox starts, it'll trigger abnormal celestial phenomena. All ghosts and monsters within a 5-mile radius will sense it, especially that snake spirit that harmed her. It will definitely come looking for you. This bottle of Realgar wine can only hold it off for a while. I looked at the stuff in my arms, then glanced at Rong Rong, who was in pain on the bed. I clenched my fist tightly. I thanked the man, then carried Rong Rong on my back and left the shop. I didn't dare to waste a single second. I carried Rong Rong on my back and rushed into a small guest house next door and booked the innermost king-size room. As soon as I entered the door, I put Rong Rong on the bed. Her face was twisted in agony at this moment. I didn't dare to delay any longer. Following the old man's instructions, I first took the bottle of Realgar wine and sprinkled it all around the door crack and windows. Then I took out the pair of Dragon Phoenix wedding candles, lit them and placed them by the head of the bed. The candlelight flickered. The dim yellow halo fell over Rong Rong's body, softening her pained face a little bit. Looking at this pair of wedding candles, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. The wedding that didn't finish last night? I never thought I'd have to make up for it while on the run like this. I nervously leaned in front of Rong Rong, staring at her stunningly beautiful face. I couldn't help but freeze. I just wanted to wipe the sweat off her face. When the next second, Rong Rong suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were glowing bright red. She suddenly grabbed me and pinned me down on the bed and bit my neck. A clap of thunder suddenly exploded in the night sky outside the window. Strong winds started howling, slamming against the window glass with loud rattling noises. Rong Rong seemed to be on the edge of turning feral. Her movements were wild and frantic. She tried to bite me several times, but stopped suddenly every time. It seemed like she was using the last bit of her sanity to hold back her animalistic instincts. I instinctively wanted to fight back, but I was scared that the detox would fail, and she'd turn completely feral. Suddenly, a familiar white mist filled the room. Right after that, the wedding candles suddenly went out. There was a loud banging on the door. A creepy, haunting voice came from outside the door. It was that crazy old hag. She really was drawn here. Rong Rong seemed to have regained a little consciousness and was triggered by the voice outside the door. She wanted to rush out to fight. I quickly hugged her tight, flipped her over and pinned her under me, signaling her to stay still. The next second, the door lock was smashed open by a huge force. The crazy old hag stood at the door, with countless hissing, tongue-flicking, poisonous snakes coiled behind her. Those cloudy eyes stared straight at me on the bed. I looked at my wife writhing in pain beneath me, and the pair of Dragon Phoenix wedding candles blown out early. A wave of ruthless determination I'd never felt rose in my chest. I grabbed the half bottle of Realgar wine from the bedside and hurled it hard at the crazy old hag. The glass bottle shattered. Splashing Realgar wine all over her body, she let out a sharp scream. Those venomous snakes reacted as if they'd been burned, writhing wildly. But she was too deranged to care about her own injuries, and charged straight at me, raising her crutch to smash right into my skull. At this life-or-death moment, don't touch him. Rongrong had stood up at some point. A faint fox shadow appeared behind her. She was surrounded by a gentle, immortal aura. A loud, piercing tiger roar echoed through the whole room, shattering all the window panes. The fox shadow behind Rongrong suddenly grew larger, carrying an earth-shattering, overwhelming pressure, and lunged straight at the crazy old hag. The hag's face twisted in horror. Before she could even step back, she was slammed hard and sent flying by the fox shadow. Her scream was drowned out by thunder and rain outside the window. The bedroom door slammed shut with an invisible force. Peace returned to the room again. The Dragon Phoenix wedding candles relit themselves. The immortal aura around Rongrong faded away. She looked like she'd used up all her strength and collapsed weakly onto the bed. The red glow in her eyes faded, replaced by a hazy, soft look like rippling spring water. "Call me wife," she whispered softly. Her sweet, soft voice made my heart flutter. It looked like the poison hadn't worn off completely yet. But the Dragon Phoenix wedding candles were less than halfway burned. I looked at her stunning face in front of me and didn't hesitate any longer. I reached out and pulled the bedside lamp cord. When I woke up again, it was already the morning of the third day. Sunlight spilled over the bed through the curtains. I moved my sore arm and found my arms empty. My heart skipped a beat in panic, and I sat up abruptly. "You're awake." Rongrong was sitting on the chair by the window, holding that tattered old book in her hand, tilting her head and looking at me. She'd changed into a simple set of modern clothes, with her hair tied up in a high ponytail. She looked just like a regular girl next door. There wasn't a single trace of demonic aura left on her. "Is your poison all gone?" She hopped over to me happily and gave me a loud smooch on the cheek. And it's a blessing in disguise, too. My demonic powers got a lot stronger. I breathed a sigh of relief. I held her hand and asked where the crazy hag went. She got hit by the backlash of my demonic power yesterday. She probably went back to heal her wounds. "Don't worry, I'll complain to Grandma when we get back. We'll make the Liu family pay for everything they did."
Oh!
Hearing that, the anxious weight in my heart finally lifted. I pulled her into a tight hug. Her warm, real body temperature finally made me sure. We made it out alive. After packing up our things quickly, we headed back to the village. As soon as we reached the village entrance, we saw Grandpa the village chief leaning on his crutch, waiting and looking around at the entrance. When he saw we were back safe and sound, the old man was so excited he cried. It turned out after the crazy hag fled badly injured that day, all the snakes surrounding the village had left too. What's even more amazing was that all the villagers with mild snake venom poisoning recovered completely overnight. The village chief held my hand, looked at Rongrong, and said meaningfully, "Our Chenjigu village. Our ancestors owed the Hu family a huge favor. Now that my oldest grandson is married into the Hu family, it finally pays off this hundreds of years old debt." As he said that, Grandpa pressed my hand and Rongrong's hand together tightly and said meaningfully again, "My boy, I was always scared you had too tough a fate, that you'd end up all alone. But now it's all okay. You've got Rongrong with you. Even if I close my eyes and pass away one day, I can go without any worries." I squeezed Rongrong's hand tightly, feeling the warm heat from her palm. Rongrong stopped being playful too. She held my hand back and leaned gently against my shoulder, whispering in my ear, "I'll be with you from now on. No one will ever dare to bully you again." I turned my head to look at her and met her bright, sparkling eyes. For a second, it felt like I could see again that tiny snow-white fox from 6 years ago, lying on my lap, quietly keeping me company as I grew up. The mountain wind blew past and swept up a few fallen leaves. I smiled a little. I held his hand and strode toward home.